Welcome back to the New Player Career Build Series with Captain. This is episode number 6. And so, last episode, we worked on some GPS navigation so that we can go out even in the foggiest conditions and be able to find our way around the world so we can complete some rescue missions. What we're going to do now is going to start to work on gearing. Now, I have a much more in-depth, complex tutorial on gearing. Go ahead and check that out. I'll put it in the description. It's a little bit of a long of a video, but I very much believe that if you kind of go into the details and you understand why something works, it is much better than giving you like a 5-second tutorial and then you spend the next couple hours pulling your hair out trying to figure it out. So if you want some more in-depth stuff on gearing, go ahead and watch that gearing tutorial, again, down in the description. What we're going to do here is we're going to make it really simple here, and we're going to jump in our boat here. And we need to understand how gearing works in-game. Let's look at some of the basics here. We can go into some of the stuff later. Asymmetrical thrust, that will be in the videos to come. So we need to understand some basic things about gearing. So let's quickly type in gear, and we get the 3 gearboxes here. Now, there were some changes. When these first came out, as you can see, we have 3 different sizes. 1-to-1, 3x3, 5x5. Right now, these are just aesthetics. The only difference between these 3 are looks and mass. So that weighs 1, that weighs 9, and this big one weighs 25. That is it. Before, when these first came out, if you used the small gearbox and you had an absolutely enormous engine in a boat and you was turning a huge propeller, it would break because there was a torque limit. So if you exceeded the torque limit of this 1-to-1 gearbox, it would break and you'd have to repair it. So that would force you to get bigger gearboxes. This caused a lot of problems. For example, let's say you had a helicopter. It's compact, but it's powerful, so that it can be fast. Or you had an airplane, compact, but it was powerful, so that it could turn the propeller really fast. You would need this enormous gearbox in order to make it work. And so what the devs did was they took away that braking function. So right now, these 3 gearboxes, they're only visual. So you could take this 1x1, you could put it on a 5x5, that's perfectly fine. But it used to not be this way. All right, so the other thing you notice about each of the gearboxes, we'll just talk about the 1-to-1, is the arrow. So as you can see, the arrow can point 2 different directions. All right, and so we need to understand some simple things about gearing here. So when you have your engine is turning, right? That's your RPS, all right? As the engine turns, you're then putting it into a gearbox. This has a multiplication effect. Now, you don't get anything for free, and this is what a lot of new players struggle with. They think that they can just keep increasing the gear ratio and magically the engine will continue to be able to function. So let's bring it down to a human perspective. Let's say you're riding your bicycle and you have a very, very low gear. All right, a low gear is a big gear. All right, now think of it as a lever, right? The bigger the gear, the bigger the lever, right? The more leverage you get. So let's say you have a stuck bolt and you have a really, really long handle on your wrench. Even if that bolt is stuck, because the lever is so long, you can easily turn that wrench. If you had a tiny, tiny little lever on your wrench, you're not going to be able to turn that wrench to be able to unstick that bolt. The long lever gives you leverage. That's where leverage comes from. And it allows you to exert a lot more force. That's power. So the lower your gear ratio, the more power you're getting. The higher your gear ratio, the less power you're getting. Now, you're trading things. You don't get anything for free. You're either trading RPS, rotations per second. Think of that as speed. All right, so RPS is speed. Torque is power. So you're either trading your RPS, your speed, for power, or you're trading power, torque, for speed, RPS. So you're trading them. You don't get anything for free. Now, you can balance them. You can have it somewhere in between, but you always have to trade with gearing. All right, it's not magic. It is math, pretty much. And so there are 2 options here, and they're based on the arrow direction. So in the case of a boat, we have the arrow pointing towards the engine. All right, now what this is doing is when the arrow is pointing towards the engine, we are trading our torque, our power, for RPS, speed. This helps us get more speed when we point the arrow towards the engine. When we point the arrow away from the engine, we are trading the speed of the engine for more power. So when would we use each situation? In a boat like this, right, the propeller can slip in the water. But let's say we had a big truck, right, a big tractor trailer that needs to haul a huge amount of weight. In cars and trucks, you tend to have the arrow pointing away from the engine. So, for example, I have a bunch of transmissions for my cars, and my trucks are, most of the arrows are pointing away from the engine because I'm trading the speed of the engine for more power. And that's because the wheel touches the ground and it has a lot of friction with the ground. In water, the propeller does not have much friction. If you go in an airplane, you would also want the arrow pointing towards the engine because the propeller slips even easier through the air. So in applications that have wheels, you're generally going to want to have arrows pointing away. In applications where you're in the water or in the air, you're going to want the arrow pointing towards this. Again, you're trading your torque, your power, for speed when you point the arrow this way. So if you go watch the gearing tutorial, it's much more in depth on that. We won't get too far in there. So for a boat, you want the arrow pointing towards the engine. We're trading the torque, our power, for our speed. Okay, so let's talk about how they actually work. So we have a ratio off and we have a ratio on. All right, if we look at the logic here, we have a gear switch. Now, this is how we make the switch for reverse. We already went over this. We have 1 to 1, so 1 rotation of the engine gives us 1 rotation of the propeller. When we turn this gearbox on, though, we get 1 rotation of the engine, we get -1 of the propeller. That way we go backwards. Pretty simple. If you look at the front here, we have 6-5. So for every, because it's facing the engine, it's for every 5 rotations of the engine, we're going to get 6 rotations of the prop. This is making us go faster. All right. 5 rotations of the engine, 6 rotations of the propeller. Now, you'll see a lot of new players. They'll immediately go bing, 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 all the way up to 3 to 1. So that is for every 1 rotation of the engine, we get 3 rotations of the propeller. Okay? And you'll get some players doing this. They'll say, okay, I'll start here. And they'll keep increasing this gear ratio. And they'll say, this doesn't make any sense. I've increased my gear ratio. My boat is going slower. This doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense, actually. Eventually, what's going to happen is, remember, you don't get anything for free. You're trading the power from your engine in this case for more speed. Eventually, you've traded away so much power, so much muscle, that you can't do it anymore. So let's go back to the bicycle analogy here. So let's say that you had a 1-to-1 gear ratio and you're riding your bicycle. That means for every 1 rotation of your pedals, the wheel in the back is going to rotate once, okay? Now let's say you're going to go up a hill, right? Now that's going to be really hard. That's going to hurt your legs. You're trying to fight this bike to go up the hill. Now, we talked about how for a lower gear, you would get a bigger gear, right? That has longer leverage, a longer arm. It makes it easier to go. So what that would be is, in the case of trying to go up a hill on a bicycle, we would be pointing it away, and let's say we go to a 3 to 1. So what that means is for every 3 rotations of your pedal, you're only going to rotate the wheel once. So if you've ever done this on a bicycle, you put it in a very low gear, you put it in, say, first gear in your bicycle, you can easily go up a hill. Now, you have to move your legs like a madman to go up the hill, but you can make it up a very steep hill because you're trading the speed of your legs for power to get you up the hill. Now let's talk about the other way, the way we have it pointing here. Now let's say you're going on a nice flat surface. Now what you're doing is you move your pedals 5 times, but you're moving the wheel 6 times. Now, because you're on good flat terrain, right, it's not too bad. You're already up to speed. You can easily move your legs 5 times, and you're gaining an extra movement of the wheel for free, essentially. Not really for free, but you see what I mean. Now, let's say you're going downhill on a bicycle. So now you're going downhill on a bicycle. You move the pedals 5 times, and you're actually getting the wheel to turn 9 times. That's what we're doing here. So I like to go back to some realistic examples of what you do in real life, and because most people have ridden a bike, they can feel it, right? You try going in a high gear up a hill, and you can't do it. You go in a low gear, your legs are moving like crazy, you're barely moving up the hill, but you are moving up the hill. All right, so with that in mind, let's go do some practical testing here. So we have 1-to-1, and then these get multiplied. So if you have multiple gearboxes in order, we're not going to actually end up doing much multiplication here, but if we're going to multiply them, let's do a real simple one for right now. So let's do a 2-to-1, 2-to-1. Again, I'm not going to go too in-depth. You can watch that gearing tutorial. These are fractions. So what this would be is a 2 times a 2. That's 4. That would be 1 times 1 is 1. So that's 4 over 1. So that would mean for every 1 rotation of the engine, we're turning the propeller 4 times. So remember, you need to multiply it. People will often make mistakes early game by adding these up. You do not add them, you multiply them. All right, so let's go do some practical testing here. Again, you want more in-depth stuff, go watch the gearing tutorial. This is a little bit on the simpler side. So we're going to start with a 1-to-1 gear ratio on these front ones. These are going to stay just for reverse. These are just for reverse, so we're going to ignore these for now. These two here are set to 1-to-1. So let's spawn it. Now let's go do a speed test. So we're going to start up the boat, and we're going to go forward here. Now let's look at our meters per second. So here we go. So we're going 9 point, I just turned so it slowed us down, but we're going about 9.8 meters per second, okay? So, how do we go faster? Again, the arrow is pointing towards the engine. As we increase this value, we're going to go faster, up until a point. Remember I said, if increasing the value causes you to go slower, it means your engine is not strong enough. You've traded away so much of the power, right? We're trading torque power for RPS speed. You've traded away too much power. You don't have enough power. So the only way to get more speed at that point is to get more power, which means make a bigger engine. So we'll even go into that as well. So now we're at a 6.5. So for every 5 rotations of the engine, we're going to get 6 rotations of the propeller. So this should make us go faster, unless we don't have enough power. So we're going to go start up. And remember, we were at 9.8 meters per second last time. And bingo. So we're at about 11. So we've gained 1.2 meters per second. Nice. Let's go up again. So pretty simple. And this is the kind of testing you need to do to make sure your builds are working right. So we'll go to 3-to-2. Every 2 rotations of the engine, we get 3 rotations of the propeller. Start it up. And remember, we're at just about 11, so we went 9.8. Now we're at 11. And let's see. Lo and behold, we're going about the same speed, a little bit slower than we were last time. So remember what I said. If the arrow is pointing towards the engine and increasing the ratio makes you go slower, you do not have enough power to go any faster by increasing the gears. So we've reached the limit. So for us, it was a 6.5 was our limit. Now every time we go up, what's going to happen is we're going to lose speed. The only way to be able to go faster now is to add bigger engines, essentially. You know, if the arrow's pointing towards the engine and increasing the ratio causes you to go slower, that means you need more power. But what we're going to do now is, in order to be able to run this gear ratio, all right, so this gear ratio here brought us up to 11. That one just hit 11 at the end, but you saw how it took a while. So those are about the same. Let's go up one more just to show you. So we'll go 9.5s here. So these are 9.5s. So we've gone up even one more gear ratio. So we can make a prediction, right? Last time we were a little bit slower. We should be even slower now. So as you can see, we're going even slower. So now we're at our slowest, right? We're at 9.8 before. Now, as you can see, it will slowly climb. We may get up there, but this is our slowest speed yet. So again, as we're increasing the ratio now, we're slowing down because we have traded away so much power. We've traded our torque, our power, for RPS, and we've given away too much power. We don't have enough power now. So what we need to do is we need to get more power. All right. So that was 8 and change. So we went from 9.8 at 1-to-1. Then we went to 11 at 6.5, and then we went down to about a 10.8 at 3.2. And now we're down to an 8 at 9.5. So let's go back to so the last good number we had was a 6.5. So let's go to 6.5. All right, but now what we'll do is we need to increase the size of our engine. So this is one of the reasons why I had to start with modular engines. You know, a lot of people will have you start with these basic engines here like these. I highly recommend you don't. I highly recommend you learn modulars now. The problem is, like, imagine you have these engines and you get to the point where you need more power. Well, where are you going to put them? These modular engines are much more compact and much more configurable. So this is all we have to do. We're going to move the belt drive and the alternator and starter. We're going to put it there. We're going to go grab the other one with our select tool. We'll cut them and we're going to move them up here. All right. So we'll paste this one. And now we'll turn on symmetry, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Control-click on the crankshaft. I'm going to add 2 more crankshaft pieces. Then I'm going to grab a piston. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've added 4 pistons to each engine. Then we have to merge the belts. So I've just added 4 pistons to each engine. I have added 50% more power to the engines. We used to have 8 cylinders. We're now up to 12-cylinder engines. All right. So we have increased the size of our engines. All right. So now we have more power. So let's go out there with a 6.5. So 6.5 last time was 11. So how do we have more speed here? Well, one of the reasons was we were still overstressed before. Now we have a bigger, more powerful engine. We're able to get to a higher RPS. Our RPS is set to a maximum of 20 on these engines. We set that earlier in the build series. And so now we're actually able to achieve a higher RPS because we have more power. So as you can see, we're getting up to 13 now. So that is our greatest speed so far. Now we're going to do the same test. We're going to continue to increase the ratio until increase in the ratio causes it to go slower. So we're going to go to 3, 2. And we'll get going. So we're at 13 last time. And here we are, about 16. So that's a pretty good speed for a boat. That is 16 meters per second. That is around 30 knots. We're a little bit over 30 knots. This is actually a pretty good speed for a rescue boat, 30 knots. All right. So let's go ahead and let's recall it. Now remember, we're at some point increasing the ratio is going to cause us to go slower because we're overloading the engine. There's too much water resistance for the amount of power we have. It's like I was saying, remember, try to go in a high gear on your bicycle and go up a hill. You do not have the leg power to do it. If you got bigger legs, guess what? You could ride that higher gear and go up the hill. But your legs are smaller, so you either build bigger legs or you go to a smaller gear. We're deciding with building bigger engines, we're getting bigger legs. So let's go to 9.5s. And so last time we were at a 16. Let's see where we get now. But as you can see, we have more muscle now in our legs. We can put in more another gear ratio. And so what you'll notice is as you get towards the Goldilocks zone here, as you notice, we're now going our fastest we've reached yet. It took us a little longer to get there. Why? We had to overcome the water resistance, but eventually we overcame the water resistance, and now we're up to 17.9. Okay, this is our fastest speed yet. 17.9. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll recall the boat. Now I'm going to make a prediction. Increase in the gear ratio is going to make us go slower. All right. That's my prediction. Increase in this gear ratio here is going to make us go slower. We'll see if I'm right. And there we are. So we're at 17.9 last time. Now we're at 12.9. Remember, we do not have enough muscle. So we have two things. One, for this boat, 30 knots is plenty fast enough. Again, if we want to speed this up later, we can do some things to do it. But 30 knots is a good speed for a boat. All right, it's not too bad. As you can see, we're getting close now. Remember, it sometimes will take a little while. We're not going to get up to 17.9 though. So we have some options. Let's say I wanted to go really, really fast on this boat. Let's say I have to go 40. I want to go 60. You'd have to add a bigger engine. You can't get around that. Bigger engine, you're going to be burning more fuel. You have to keep these things in mind. More cost, more weight. All of these things are a trade-off for you getting that more speed. So what we're going to do for now is we don't need our boat to be ridiculous. You get a lot of new players, and the first thing they want is, oh, I want a boat that goes 90 miles an hour, and I want it to do everything, and I want it to be huge, and I want it to have this and this and this. I highly recommend when you're starting, just build a good boat like this that does the work. Learn the game. Remember, you're just starting. Often, if you're a new, you're a new player and you're watching this series, you're just starting. It's better to take your time, get used to it, build a boat like this that works, and then guess what you can do later? Build another boat. This is a great building game. You can always build something new, get something that works to start with. So we found out that 2.1 will reduce our speed. 9.5 is our Goldilocks zone. Any higher than this, we go slower. Any lower than this, we go slower. This is our Goldilocks gear ratio for this particular boat with this particular setup. You can't take these gear ratios and just put them on your boat and expect to get the same performance. It's all based on the boat, your engine, all of these factors. So 9.5. So this is our Goldilocks gear ratio for this particular boat in this particular setup with these particular engines. And so we'll go for one more quick run, and as you can see, we should be getting up there. I think we actually might need to go one gear ratio down. Let me check it. There we go. I didn't press the throttle all the way up. So there's the throttle all the way up. So 19 point, I'm sorry, 17 point, we hit 9.9 there. We almost hit 18 meters per second. All right, so that is about 34 knots. That's more than 34 knots there. And so this is a good speed for our starting boat. So I hope you guys found that helpful. I hope you understand it. If you really need to go get some more information on gearing, get some in-depth, again, go down the description, listen to that gearing tutorial. It is long, but I go in great depth on how all these things work. I do some analogies. And as always, if you have some questions, if there are some things you want to learn in this new player career build series, please comment down below, and that will let me know what you guys would like to learn next. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.